My younger sister, Emily, has always been a hopeless romantic. She loves the idea of grand gestures, serendipitous encounters, and, unfortunately, dating apps. She had been using one for a few months, chatting with guys, meeting a few here and there, but nothing serious ever came from it. Then one night, she matched with a guy named Daniel. Daniel seemed perfect. He was charming, attentive, and, according to his pictures, quite handsome. They talked for about a week before he asked her to meet up. She was giddy, excited, and a little nervous. He suggested a quiet restaurant in town, one that was just busy enough to be comfortable but not too loud for conversation. She agreed. The night of the date, she dressed up, called me as she did her makeup, and told me all about him. I listened, nodding along, giving her my usual warnings about staying safe. She rolled her eyes, laughing. "Relax, it's just dinner." She got to the restaurant a few minutes early, grabbed a table and waited. She texted Daniel to let him know she was there. A few minutes later, someone sat at the table across from her. But it wasn't Daniel. The man who sat down looked nothing like his pictures. He was older, maybe late 40s, with thinning hair and dark, tired eyes. He smiled, but there was something off about it. "Emily?" he asked. She hesitated before nodding. "You're Daniel?" she asked, her voice uncertain. He chuckled. "Sorry, I might have used an old picture. Hope you don't mind." She did mind. Every instinct told her to leave, but she didn't want to be rude. Maybe it was a misunderstanding, maybe he was just nervous. She tried to be polite, but the more they talked, the worse the feeling in her gut became. He kept leaning in, staring a little too long, his smile never quite reaching his eyes. And the worst part? He knew things about her that she had never mentioned in their chats. Her job, where she lived, even that she had a sister. "How do you know that?" she asked, forcing a nervous laugh. He waved a hand dismissively. "You must have mentioned it." She hadn't. She was sure of it. She decided to cut the date short. She grabbed her purse and stood. "I'm sorry, but I have to go." His hand shot out, gripping her wrist tightly. "Already?" "But we're just getting started." Her heart pounded. "Let go of me," she said, voice firm. For a moment he didn't move. Then slowly his grip loosened, and he smiled again. "Of course, my apologies. I hope we can do this again." She forced a nod, then practically ran out of the restaurant. Her car was parked a few blocks away, and as she walked, she kept glancing over her shoulder. He wasn't following her. At least, not that she could see. When she got to her car, she locked the doors, took a deep breath, and pulled out her phone to call me. Before she could dial, a message popped up. "That wasn't very nice, Emily." Her hands shook as she read it. Another message followed. "You shouldn't walk alone at night." She looked around, eyes darting across the dimly lit street. No sign of him. Another message. "See you soon." She started the car and sped home, her mind racing. When she got home, I was waiting for her. She ran inside, slamming the door behind her. She told me everything, and I did what any protective sibling would. I called the police. They took her statement, looked at the messages, and told us they would look into it. But there wasn't much they could do without a real name or proof of an actual crime. That night she stayed in my room, too scared to sleep alone. Around 2 a.m, her phone vibrated again. "Nice house!" We both sat up, blood turning to ice. A tapping sound came from the window, slow, deliberate. We didn't dare move. I reached for my phone, my fingers fumbling as I dialed 911. The operator answered, but before I could speak, the tapping stopped. I swallowed hard and forced myself to peek through the blinds. A figure stood just beyond the glow of the porch light, barely more than a shadow against the darkness. My breath hitched as I strained to make out his features, but the angle of the light kept him hidden, his form distorted, unnatural. The figure took a step closer, just enough for the light to catch the glint of his eyes. Then slowly he raised his hand and pressed a single finger to his lips. Shh! A cold shudder ran down my spine. The dispatcher's voice crackled in my ear. 911! What's your emergency? I forced myself to speak, my voice barely above a whisper. There's someone outside our house. He's watching us. The figure tilted his head as if he could hear me. Then, without another word, he turned and vanished into the night. The silence that followed was deafening. Minutes felt like hours as we waited for the police. When they finally arrived, flashing lights cutting through the darkness, they found nothing. No footprints, no signs of forced entry, nothing to prove he had ever been there. But we knew better, and so did he. That night we barricaded ourselves inside, every light in the house blazing. Sleep was out of the question. Every creak, every shift of the wind sent fresh waves of terror through us. At some point after we started to fall asleep, the window slid open. A rustling noise made us freeze. Then someone tried pushing their way through the roller shade. That was when both my sister and I screamed, causing not only me but our parents from upstairs to come rushing into her room. The man trying to come in gave up before we even made it there. Our dad ran outside to chase after him, but he was already long gone, vanished into the night. Of course, my dad called the cops to file a report. I gave them the man's cell phone number and they documented the text messages. The officers assured us they would do what they could to trace the number, though it could take days. After the weekend, my dad got a call from the police station asking him to come in. They had traced the number, but it led back to a fake account generated through an app. There was no guarantee they could track it to a specific device. My dad urged them to do whatever they could. Weeks passed, and we never heard back from the police. Life slowly returned to normal. We tried to move on, pushing the fear to the back of our minds, but some questions still haunted us. Who was he? Why did he choose me? And how did he think he'd get away with something like climbing into a girl's window? We might never know. But even now, in the dead of night, I still hear it. The slow, deliberate tapping against the glass. And I know wherever we go, he's still watching, waiting.